Lieutenant Mara Kalik stood motionless on the observation deck of Phalaris Station, her eyes tracing the violet tendrils of dusk that curled across the nebulan belt beyond the reinforced viewport. Sensors blinked along her datapad, each indicator a silent herald of something extraordinary, something impossible. "Lieutenant?" Ensign Rail's voice crackled through her earpiece, low and tense. He was stationed at the secondary sensor array, fingers dancing across holographic controls, desperately trying to reconcile this reading with known ship registries. "You're not going to believe this." Mara didn't turn immediately, letting the hum of the station settle around her. Finally, she tilted her head, meeting Rail's anxious gaze displayed on the inlaid monitor. "Show me." He toggled a live holo feed. Before them floated the skeletal outline of a freighter, vast, silent, and gleaming as though freshly christened. Its hull bore the unmistakable curvature and paneling of an Earth-class merchant vessel, the Arian's Dawn. "Scan says hull encryption matches a lost Earth freighter," Rail murmured, voice almost reverent. "Last tracked in 2256 route to Solstice Colony. Presumed destroyed in the Caridian Rift." Mara's jaw tightened. The Caridian Rift was a gaping anomaly of spatial turbulence. Any ship caught within was shredded by gravimetric eddies. No vessel had ever emerged intact. "How close is it?" she asked quietly. 2.3 million kilometers drifting. No active life signals. No power fluctuations beyond a faint core hum. A shiver ran down Mara's spine. In all her years serving the Empire, she had never encountered anything that defied known science so completely. "Prepare a boarding. Team," she ordered. "I want a shuttle ready within the hour. Archaeotech Division, Guild of Exo-Engineers. Everyone who can handle unknown tech. We inspect everything. Hull integrity, power cells, any data cores. And seal off the docking bay. No unauthorized personnel." "Understood, Lieutenant," Rail replied, swiping to dispatch the orders. Before her, the Arian's Dawn hung like a specter, a ghost ship from a forgotten epoch. 8 metal spines extended from its flanks, once stabilizers for deep space travel, now eerily static. The faded insignia of Earth's old commerce fleets was barely perceptible beneath a layer of unblemished alloy. It was as if time itself had chosen to spare this vessel from decay. An hour later, Mara's shuttle lurched away from Phalaris Station, the blackness of open space curling around them. Ensign Rail piloted, while Dr. Zhue Lian, Phalaris's leading archaeotech scientist, hovered over a portable data console. 2 security officers, rifles locked and loaded, flanked them. The hum of the shuttle's engine and the low chatter of diagnostics formed a tense lullaby. "Lieutenant, bioscanners detect no atmospheric breach," Rail reported. "Hull appears pristine. No micrometeorite impacts, no signs of salvaging. It's like it just reassembled itself out here." Shu's eyes glowed with scientific fervor. "I've reviewed every registry. The Elysium Protocol designation, there's no record. If it's genuine, this ship was operating under deep cover." "Deep cover or off-grid," Mara murmured, gripping the armrest. "Either way, we need answers." They docked with barely a tremor. The airlock cycled open to reveal a corridor bathed in soft teal light, the luminescence seeping through polarized panels embedded flush with the bulkheads. The party disembarked in single file, rifles held at the ready. Every footstep echoed across the metallic floor, the sound swallowed by the hush that seemed to emanate from the ship itself. "Stay close," Mara whispered. "Zhue, record every detail." Dr. Zhu's holo recorder flickered to life, projecting a semi-transparent timeline alongside her vision. Hull composition, energy signatures, panel glyphs. As they advanced, the faint whir of unseen machinery accompanied them. No hum of ventilation, no hiss of atmosphere, just a steady, mechanical heartbeat. After 3 junctions, they reached the main corridor. Bulkheads bore no imperial insignia. Instead, a stylized glyph, Earth rising behind 3 jagged mountains, glowed faintly above each door. The old Terra emblem, half forgotten for centuries, pulsed with a primordial elegance. "What's their class designation?" Hugh asked, voice hushed. Mara shook her head. "Unknown, It predates modern classifications. Ensign Rail knelt to inspect a maintenance panel. Access ports here, he said. But the connectors, nothing I've seen in Imperial databanks. They're organic. Bioalloy. Adaptive shapes. Almost alive. Before Mara could reply, the hatch at the end of the corridor slid open with a seamless, pneumatic hiss. They entered the bridge. Centered beneath a domed viewport, the captain's chair sat abandoned. Swivel mechanism still functional but unmanned. Hollow consoles floated on either side, symbols shifting midair, liquid glyphs rearranging themselves in patterns that defied simple encryption. Dr. Zhu's fingers danced through the holograms, activating a rudimentary decrypt protocol. These sequences, they change every second. It's as if the code is learning, self-modifying. Mara's visor reflected the holoscreens. Lines of shifting script, diagrams of unknown stellar coordinates, and a single phrase etched across the central console in bold, glowing letters. Return to Nova Terra, Elysium Protocol engaged. What's Nova Terra? She asked, stepping closer. Yu paused her decryption. My records list Nova Terra as a myth, a supposed utopian colony established after Earth's collapse, never confirmed. Most historians regard it as legend. If this ship really is bound for such a place, she trailed off, swallowing as the implications settled over her. Quiet, Mara ordered suddenly. All at once the lights dimmed. The hum of the ship rose, a low, resonant vibration that reverberated in their bones. A hollow projector in the center of the bridge flared to life, casting a phosphorescent glow on the figures. There, flickering against the glass, materialized the semi-transparent visage of a woman, partly decomposed yet painfully alive in holographic form. She stood, in tattered flight leathers that bore burn scars and frost cracks as though she had lived through both fire and ice, her eyes sunken but defiant, fixed on Mara and her team. The feed cracked with static. Slowly, the woman raised a trembling hand to her ear, as if struggling to focus. Before the plague consumed Solstice Colony, her voice rasped, distant and frayed. We set coordinates to Nova Terra. If this hollow record remains intact, know that our timeline fractured in 2256. Mara felt the hairs along her neck prick. Initiate recording, she whispered into her comm. The projection's features sharpened. A nameplate flickered briefly. Captain Ilara Muir, Commanding Officer, Arion's Dawn. The name resonated with grim irony. Muir had commanded a ship considered lost for 2 decades. Earth infected with the Nephra virus, Ilara continued, scanning the deck with haunted intensity. Our last hope was to flee, to save what remained of humanity. Her cheek twitched as if tasting some bitter memory. We initiated the Elysium Protocol. May we find salvation in another reality. The hollow shard sputtered, stuttering beneath a cascade of static lines. For a moment her eyes widened and she whispered a word that died before it reached clarity. Then the projection fragmented, tearing itself apart like a shattered mirror, until only a few glowing shards hovered in the air before dissolving into nothing. Dr. Zhui exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath. She speaks of timelines and another reality. Subspace drift, parallel universe theories. Rail shook his head, stepping back from the console. If they jumped dimensions, that means this ship hasn't been in our cosmos continuously, Mara finished. She closed her eyes, caught between awe and dread. So what we're looking at is not just a lost Earth vessel. It's a vessel that might have navigated between realities and returned here. A distant chime echoed through the corridor. The emergency airlock seal. Outside, the shuttle had sealed and retracted. Mara pressed her comm. Lien, seal this ship. No one in or out without my authorization. Prepare extraction protocols. We bring everything back to Phalaris. Hull fragments, data cores, power cells, no exceptions. Aye, Lieutenant, came Lien's clipped reply. Dr. Zhu crouched to examine a power conduit jutting from the floor. This alloy, copper nanocarbide weave but layered in chronophasic gel. It's alive. It responds to temporal fluctuations if it's still functional, if we can reverse engineer even a fraction. Mara placed a steady hand on Zhu's shoulder. First, we catalog and secure it. Then we figure out what we're dealing with. But do not activate any systems, understood? Zhu nodded slowly, gloved fingers already scanning the conduit. Understood. As the boarding party spread out across the ship, collecting encrypted data pads, power modules, and swabs of the chronophasic gel, Mara allowed herself to wonder. The Arian's Dawn had departed Earth 20 years ago on a routine mission. 6 months into its journey, it vanished. Now it hovered in the Nebulon belt, as intact as the day it launched, and with technology that could shatter the foundations of Imperial science. In the dim glow of the teal lights, Mara felt a cold dread coil in her chest. If the Elysium Protocol was more than mere escape, if it truly bridged dimensions, then the Empire's grip on knowledge, on reality itself, was far more tenuous than anyone had suspected. 2 hours later, the shuttle lifted off with the first cache of artifacts. Mara remained behind, striding to the viewport. She traced the ghostly silhouette of the Arian's Dawn one last time before it vanished into the void. "Lieutenant," Rail said through the comm, voice unsteady. "You ever think that maybe some things aren't meant to come back?" Mara's gaze never wavered. The freighter's outline receded, dark against the starlit expanse. "Some things," she replied quietly, "are impossible to forget." The archaeotech laboratories of Phalaris Station thrummed with activity, a feverish ballet of scientists, engineers, and security personnel. Dr. Xue Lian oversaw a barricaded chamber at the heart of the facility, where the dimensional field core, harvested from the hull of the Arian's Dawn, rested on a magnetic cradle. Its crystalline lattice glowed with iridescent pulses, as if tapping into some unseen cosmic heartbeat. "Energy readings are off the charts," Xue murmured, adjusting the containment field's frequency. Sparks of emerald light flickered around, the core's edges dissolving into the chamber's atmosphere with a soft, resonant hum. "The field it generates is unimaginable. We're seeing localized distortions in space-time, minute fractures, but fractures nonetheless." Lieutenant Mara Calix stood behind her, arms folded, eyes narrowed. Beside her, Ensign Rail monitored a holographic display showing fluctuating tachyon flux. "You said preliminary scans detected overlapping realities," Mara prompted. Xue nodded, fingers gliding through the holo controls. "Yes, think of it as a pocket universe being tethered to ours, barely anchored. If we attempt to synchronize our grid with it, we could replicate the process, but the stability margin is next to zero. Misalign by a fraction of a Planck unit, and the pocket might collapse, cascading ripples through our sector." A low alarm throbbed through the facility's comms. Security officers hurried past, rifles slung but alert. "What is it?" Mara asked. Rail tapped the nearest terminal. "Imperial High Command just relayed scout reports. Frontier rebels near the Phaeton Expanse are wielding weapons crafted from recovered Arian's Dawn fragments. They call them Elysium reactors. Battle scans confirm these reactors bend through shields, virtually unstoppable." Mara's pulse quickened. "So the rebels got their hands on pieces before we secured the vessel." She ground her teeth. "We need to contain the situation before it escalates." "Admiral Garen Voss is en route," Rail added. "He's requested immediate briefing." Within minutes, Admiral Voss strode into the chamber, his polished boots clicking against the metallic floor. His uniform bore the rank stripes of a 3-star commandant, and his stern expression mirrored the urgency of his steps. "Lieutenant Calix, Dr. Zhu," he began, voice gravelly. "I trust you have something extraordinary to show me." He cast a sharp glance at the containment chamber. "Tell me we recovered the core intact." Zhu inclined her head. "Intact, sir, but unstable. We've isolated it, but any activation attempt could be catastrophic." She activated a holothrow, projecting a 3-dimensional model of the core's energy field. "These are the flux signatures detected when the core engaged during retrieval. Notice the interference patterns, higher dimensional oscillations, overlaying our spacetime matrix." Voss studied the display, fingers tapping his jaw. "Fascinating. If harnessed, this technology would render every conventional weapon obsolete. Imagine reactors that can phase through enemy barricades, deliver a payload, and vanish without trace. His eyes gleamed with ambition. The Empire deserves that edge. Mara stepped forward. Admiral, with all due respect, we must proceed. With caution. Captain Alara Muir's hololog suggested the protocol fractured her timeline. There's a real danger of uncontrolled rifts. Voss's face hardened. Rumors. We've seen no evidence of timeline fracture. Only a few distorted pixels in the ship's last transmission. Tell me, how long until we can replicate the core? Shui hesitated. Replicating would require reverse engineering the quantum entanglement matrix. Estimations are weeks to achieve a stable prototype. Voss's lips curled. Weeks? We don't have weeks. Rebels are attacking outposts. Their Elysium reactors are unstoppable. He raised a hand. You will prioritize weaponization. I want prototypes in 17 days. If you require resources. Mara cut in, voice low but firm. Sir, I must insist. Before she could finish, a piercing klaxon sounded throughout the station. Red lights bathed the corridors as automated bulletins blared. Security breach. Biosecure Unit 14 overrun. Voss drew his sidearm in a fluid motion. Security, lock down the lab. Lieutenant, Dr. Shu, follow me. He pivoted, heading toward the exit. Mara and Jue exchanged a glance before sprinting to keep pace. Biosecure Unit 14 was a sealed chamber reserved for the Arian's Dawn's surviving crew member, Captain Alara Muir. The lone survivor had been in stasis, her neural pathways, kept alive by nanocapsules that halted the terminal nephrovirus ravaging her biological functions. Now the door's reinforced shutters had been forced open from within. Security sensors indicated multiple intruders. Lieutenant Mara kicked down the inner hatch. Alarms shrieked as she and Jua entered the unit's fluorescent glare. Two rebel fighters, faces obscured by respirators, held phaser pistols trained on the biopods. One of them slapped a data stick against the console's control matrix. Leave her be, snarled the taller rebel, voice muffled. He brandished the stick, a chipped remnant of the Arian's Dawn's memory core. This tech is ours now. The Empire doesn't deserve it, Mara shouted. Security team, move in! Steel-shod boots thundered outside. At her signal, 3 armored guards burst in, weapons raised, but before they could aim, the shorter rebel pressed a button on the data stick. A pulse shot through the room, an atavistic distortion that rippled across every surface, momentarily warping the air. The guards staggered backward, shuts of blue-white light arcing from their phasers. The rebels fled down a side corridor, dragging Captain Muir's stasis pod behind them. After them, Voss roared, seizing Mara's arm. Don't let them escape with the captain. Mara hesitated, torn. She knew the rebels would try to exploit Captain Muir's knowledge of the Elysium Protocol, but she also knew the dangers of reflexive retaliation. Chu seized a handheld scanner and approached the transparent pod. Captain Muir's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Calyx, she whispered, voice hoarse. Then her gaze drifted to the shattered console. No, they can't have it. With a surge of strength, she pushed the top lid up, slumping forward. Mara caught her arm. Captain, you're safe now. Muir's eyes locked onto Shu's. The core, it must be destroyed. You can't trust the Empire with it. Her voice, though weak, carried an urgency that made Mara's heart clench. They'll weaponize it, and then reality will splinter. Mara knelt beside her. Admiral, she's losing oxygen stability. We have to move her. Voss barked. Enough. Captain Muir's data goes to high command. We recover the reactor schematics and a distant explosion rattled the facility. Smoke poured from vents as the rebel fighters set charges to collapse corridors. The station's emergency lockdown protocols activated. Blasts of red gas hissed down the hallways, incapacitant gas to subdue hostiles. The clatter of boots intensified. In here! Shui pulled Mara and Muir behind a bulkhead. Gas began to seep into the corridor beyond them, greenish fog curling under the door. Mara slammed her fist against the intercom. Security, seal this. Sector, rebel incursion, code Crimson. Voss wheeled around, face twisted with frustration. They know how to use the core's energy pulses to override security subroutines. We cannot keep them contained. Mara stood facing him with unwavering resolve. Admiral, she said quietly, please, listen. She glanced at Captain Muir, whose chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. If you continue to weaponize this technology, you won't just lose control over the rebels. You'll lose control over space-time itself. Captain Muir saw the fractures. You saw the readings. This is bigger than any battle. Voss's jaw twitched. Rage and ambition warred in his eyes. Behind him, the comms crackled as reinforcements pleaded for orders. The facility continued to groan under the storm of sabotage outside. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the floor. Sparks flew from the overhead conduits. Lights flickered. The hollow projection of the dimensional field core, a ghostly echo, flickered to life on a nearby viewport. Shards of data cascaded across the screen. Fractured landscapes, impossible sky cities collapsing into pyramidal fragments. Mara seized the moment. Look at that, she pointed. Those aren't just simulations. That's a visual echo of what happened when the Aryan's dawn crossed dimensions. Those worlds, Earth timelines that fell to virus outbreaks, civilizations wiped away, are fragmenting even now. If you keep pushing this tech, these fragments will bleed into our reality. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Captain Muir's weakened voice echoed across the chamber. Tell him the moment you weaponize the core, the rifts will accelerate. You'll see your enemies, and then you'll lose them to realities you cannot even imagine. Voss's spine stiffened. He leveled his sidearm at Mara, finger tightening on the trigger. So you betray the Empire? You destroy our greatest weapon because of a dying woman's ramblings? Mara drew her own blaster, training it on the Admiral's chest. I would destroy it because we can't survive unleashed fractures. If you fire, I will shoot you. Voss's eyes flickered between Mara and the hollow fragments. The tension exploded, a clash of wills, metal, and destiny. He hesitated, the weight of the core's power pressing down on him. Sirens blared overhead. Core containment failure imminent. The reactor's containment field was collapsing, siphoning power from the station grid. Red emergency lights pulsed in staccato. Words failed Voss. Slowly, he lowered his sidearm. You're delusional. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted rebels swarming the adjacent corridor, jaws twisted behind gas masks. They pressed forward, weapons raised. Mara seized the moment. Admiral, get to safety. We'll handle this. He blinked, torn. Then, with a curt nod, he gave a single order into his comm. Eject the reactor core into the void. Seal the chamber. A squad of armored guards, led by Voss himself, hustled to a control console. They initiated the ejection sequence. The core, suspended in its magnetic cradle, began to detach from its energy anchors. Chains of sparks danced along its facets. The walls groaned as containment shields collapsed. In one synchronized motion, the doors at the end of the corridor burst open. Rebel fighters poured in, phaser pulses igniting in crimson arcs. Mara dove for cover, rounding the corner to avoid the crossfire. Chewie stayed at the console, hands flying over controls to override the ejection safeguards. Dr. Zhu, Mara shouted, if you stop it, the core will overload and implode. Zhu didn't respond. Her eyes were glued to the readouts, power intake spiking off the charts, tachyon fields twisting into chaotic knots. Mara lunged forward, grabbing Xue's shoulder. We have to finish it, now! Xue met her gaze, face pale but resolute. With a frantic keystroke, she initiated the final sequence. Alarms screamed as the dimensional field core lifted off its cradle, hovering for a split second in defiance of gravity. Then, with a thunderous pulse that rattled the entire lab, it shot through the blowout hatch, vanishing into the vacuum of space. Silence fell, an eerie, bone-deep stillness interrupted only by the fading hiss of fog pumps clearing the chamber. Rebel fighters froze, momentarily disoriented. Security forces, led by Mara, surged forward in disciplined formation, phaser blasts cutting through the confusion until the intruders either surrendered or fled. Mara knelt beside Captain Muir's pod. The lid slid open and the captain's gaunt face peered up at her. Gasping as though born anew, she managed a faint smile. "You did it," she whispered. "Reality holds." She closed her eyes, exhaling her last breath. Mara closed her pistol and rose, turning to watch the reactor core as it drifted away into the void. Tiny, brilliant, and deadly. 3 days later, in a reserved chamber of Phalaris Station, Imperial High Command convened a tribunal. To Lieutenant Mara Calix's surprise, she was neither arrested nor demoted. Instead, she found herself standing before a council of robed elders and generals, their expressions inscrutable. Admiral Voss sat to the side, jaw clenched, but silent. The tribunal's lead advisor, Grand Ensign Tormin, cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Calix, you have allowed unauthorized destruction of Imperial technology. An officer of lesser rank might have been sentenced to confinement for insubordination. Yet, your actions prevented a catastrophe that could have consumed entire star systems. We commend your prudence." Mara's heart pounded. She bowed her head. "Thank you, sir." Tormin inclined his head in turn. "However, the matter is not concluded. The Elysium Protocol's remnants, any surviving data, any fragments buried in rebel caches, must be purged. We will not allow another threat to emerge. You and Dr. Zhua will oversee extraction teams assigned to neutralize any potential pockets of this technology." Mara nodded. "Understood." As Tormin beckoned her to be dismissed, Admiral Voss rose abruptly. "Lieutenant," he said, voice tight, "you've won this skirmish, but the Empire will return to this endeavor when the front lines settle. Remember that." Mara met his gaze steadily. The Elysium core was more than a weapon. It was a cataclysm waiting to happen. "I will not stand idly by to see reality unraveled." Voss's lip curled, but he offered no retort. Turning on his heel, he exited the chamber, leaving Mara alone with the Council's ambiguous approval. In the quiet of the station's upper observatory, Mara found Dr. Shu studying a lone display screen. It showed a residual fragment of hollow data, Captain Muir's final transmission. The words repeated in a loop. "Save your future, or lose all futures." Mara placed a hand on Zhua's shoulder. "What will you do with this?" Shu's gaze was distant. "I'll store it in a sealed vault. No one will see it, unless reality itself starts to crack." She offered a tentative smile. "Rest in peace, Captain Muir." Mara turned to gaze out the viewport. Phalaris Station hung in the void like a sentinel, its lights pale against the ink-black sky. In the distance, stars winked indifferently, unaware of the fractures that had nearly ruptured their domain. She exhaled, steeling herself for the work ahead. Extracting and purging every last particle of Elysium tech across the Empire's vast expanse would be a monumental task, but it was one she had sworn to see through. As she watched a passing freighter drift into the nebula's violet haze, Mara felt a solemn resolve take root. Some technologies, no matter how powerful, crossed lines that should never be breached. The Aryan's dawn had returned with secrets that even the Empire could not contain. Truths about fractured timelines that belonged no longer to any single reality. And so, with the weight of multiple futures on her shoulders, Lieutenant Mara Calix prepared to safeguard the fragile veil separating their world from the infinite beyond.